Well, welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining our 2022 legislative preview for the ACLU of Oklahoma. We are so excited that you're here. I know that many of you are probably home for a lot of reasons, including the weather, and glad that you could join us for your lunch break or your lunchtime and just hear about the bills and that we're following, good and the bad. We are excited about this session. Despite what you may have seen in some of the bills that are kind of making their way and getting a lot of media attention, there are some good bills that we're excited about. So we're really excited to be able to talk to you about those bills and then the bills that we're not so excited about. My name is Tamaya Cox-Ture. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the executive director of the ACLU of Oklahoma. I have been with ACLU in this position for over a year, but prior to that, I had been the lobbyist at a different affiliate or at a different organization in Oklahoma City doing reproductive justice and abortion rights work for almost 10 years. So I say all that says policy is kind of where I feel the most comfortable and excited about. So we can definitely geek out today and the rest of the session for those that are interested and want to. Before I introduce our new policy director, who I'm super excited, and if we go on to the next slide, who I'm super excited to, and the next one, to introduce, I do want to just a few housekeeping things for everyone. This is going to be recorded. We are going to share this in our social media for those that could not attend for a lot of different reasons. So just know that it will be recorded. You are not, one more back, you are unable to be seen right now, so you don't have to worry about that. In the chat, if you haven't already, we'd really like for you just to introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, the city you're located in, what podcast or book or TV show are you really into right now? We'd love to hear that. Always want to make sure that we are giving great suggestions for other folks. And then importantly, why are you here? What are the bills that are interesting, that you're most interested in? What are the issues? Or maybe policy is just, and the session is just not something that you're excited about or know anything about, and you want to learn more or how to get more involved. We'd love to hear that as well. We know that we were not going to be able to capture everything that we want to in this hour, but we know at the end we'll be able to tell you a little more resources, more organizations that you'll be able to, we hope to connect you with, that you'll be able to find those areas that that speak to you. If you do have any questions, we're definitely going to save time at the end for questions. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you can, you use your questions or ask your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will do our best to answer them either in real time or toward the end. But most importantly, we will make sure that we you have our contact information so that we can, so that we'll be able to let you know what we're doing and you can connect with us. So with all that said, I definitely want to bring on Cindy Nguyen, who is our new policy director. Cindy comes to us from the YWCA and started the beginning of this year. So very new, but not new to the movement by all means. Comes with such a great wealth of knowledge regarding impacted communities and direct services to those communities. She also does a lot of has done a lot of DEI work. So we are so excited that she decided to join our team and is really going to be at the Capitol as often as she can be, but we're still in a pandemic and recognizing that, as often as she can be, to really talk about our issues and really, lend a voice to sometimes those that are unable. We recognize the privilege it is to be at the Capitol during the day. Not everyone can do that. So with all that said, knowing that Cindy is new, we definitely want to make sure that that the issues that are important to you, you are connecting with Cindy. And like I said, we'll put our information at the end. But Cindy, if you want to just take a few minutes or get started, we can go from there.
Yes, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Tamaya. And like Tamaya said, my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I come from the YWCA in Oklahoma City. So I have an extensive background in crisis services work as well as racial and gender justice training. And I like to joke that I get paid to have really uncomfortable conversations with people, and I get to bring those type of conversations at the Capitol. I get to examine all the ways in which our own biases as well as systems of oppression impact the decisions that we make every single day. So I get to have that really fun work and have those really uncomfortable conversations, but bring it to the point where people don't feel attacked when having them. So I'm super excited to join the ACLU of Oklahoma and not only have the mission of promoting and protecting civil liberties, but as well as be surrounded by incredible colleagues whose goal is to make Oklahoma more equitable as well as more inclusive. So let's go ahead and get started. And because my goal for you all here today is to make policy work as accessible as possible, because we know a lot of times they make it difficult on purpose, because if you have a snowstorm and you are getting groceries and you are taking care of the bills, you don't necessarily have time to care about or even look up all of these bills. But that's what our job is for you all here today, is to make it as easy and accessible as possible, because we know that the decisions being made under the dome impact marginalized people and people living on the margins most. Oh, let's see if I can go next. There we go. So we are going to have the top 4 legislative priorities for 2022. If you don't see the issues that you are most concerned about on here, it does not mean that we are not tracking them. In fact, if you saw my tracking sheet, you would, oh, I don't know what happened. Let's go back. I think someone else might have control of it. Okay. But if you do not see it on there, and if you look at our tracking sheet, you might have to do some breathing exercises. And I joke that I will be at the Capitol more often than not. So if you do see me there and I look a little stressed out, one, it probably is because I am, but also all the breathing techniques and grounding exercises that I learned as a crisis services advocate doesn't really work at the Capitol. But nevertheless, I would love for you to be able to say hello, and I would love to see a friendly face there. So our top 4 priorities this legislative session will be classroom censorship bills, or as you may know it, anti-critical race theory bills, 2S LGBTQ plus rights, reproductive freedom, as well as criminal legal reform. And we are going to do a breakdown in all of these bills in the next few slides.
So real quickly, we just wanted to give a breakdown and a legislative landscape of what the Capitol looks like this year. And it means nothing. For those that have been working kind of in social justice or justice activism world, we know that the R's and D's, it means nothing what the letter is behind the representative's name. It really is about making those connections. However, we're also very real and recognize that sometimes we need to make sure that our champions and those that are looking at ways to move Oklahoma forward, we want to recognize like where we land. So this is just the breakdown of both the House. On my, I guess, left side, there's 101 members. On the House, this is the breakdown of the Republicans and Democrats, and recognizing that the Republicans hold a supermajority. And then you will see on the other column, it's the breakdown of the Senate. And again, Republicans hold a supermajority. And we also know that Republicans do hold all statewide positions. And again, as an affiliate, as an organization that is nonpartisan, we truly believe that we have an obligation to talk to every member and really talk about what these issues are and why they're important to us. But we also recognize that some people just want to see, how tough the fight could be sometimes. And when any party holds a supermajority, it does make it extremely difficult sometimes to really get progressive or really get legislation that's important to pass. And this is just kind of where we are. So we wanted to make sure that we are all very cognizant, and if you live in Oklahoma, I'm sure you are, of sometimes the uphill battle it is to really push Oklahoma forward with progressive policies that we know, help the lives of Oklahomans. Next slide.
So this is one of my favorite things, is to add memes to everything. So let's actually talk about the bills that we are really excited for this session. So we wanted to start on a really good note. So some of these bills look like, let's see if I can get there. So Senate Bill 235, which was carried over from last session, from Senator Montgomery as well as Representative Caldwell. It is a tribal regalia bill. So I think somebody else, I can't tell if they're controlling it, but it keeps going. Okay, let's see. So our tribal regalia bill, we are super excited about, which allows Indigenous students to wear tribal regalia during high school graduation. So we are super excited about that. Although that bill focuses more on religious freedoms, I can't tell if that keeps going. That's not me. That's fine. We're going to work it through it. I have been a crisis services advocate, so we're going to get through this together. So this tribal regalia bill, we are super excited about, just because we know that this has been a constant issue, especially for Indigenous students in Oklahoma. Although that bill focuses primarily on religious freedoms, we are hoping to strengthen that language once that bill hopefully makes it out of committee. Our incredible communications intern, Cameron, who is also on the chat, if you want to say hi, Cameron, has been an incredible advocate in Indigenous sovereignty, as well as looking up model bills for Oklahoma to model after. Our next one is House Joint Resolution 1050 by Rep. Turner, which we are super excited about, just because this could be a state question on the November ballot. So this could be a state question to end the death penalty. So we're really excited about that one, just because we know that again and again and again, we have seen a failed system carry out inhumane, cruel, and reckless executions in the name of justice. So full disclosure, the ACLU of Oklahoma has taken a firm stance against the death penalty. And if you want to get more involved with our work, I know that Cass has the link to our advocacy toolkit. There it is, our advocacy toolkit that our incredible organizer, Jasmine Brown-Dutres, has created. Our next bill, we are going to go more into criminal legal reform, is the bill from Representative Miller, which is automatic expungement. And the way that expungement works in this state is that you have to have a nonviolent offense, and it has to be a misdemeanor, and you have to wait about 5 years afterwards. The reason a lot of people are not able to expunge their own records is because of court debt. That's probably one of the biggest reasons. So if you have any type of debt with the court, or if you have been previously incarcerated and you have all of these bills that you have to pay, chances are you are not able to expunge that type of record. So we are really excited for Representative Miller's bill, which means it goes into Senator Thompson's bill. So he actually addresses a lot of these fines and fees that people who have been convicted to try to clear a lot of that, because up to, I think the number was 66 to 90% of district court funding comes from people who are involved with the criminal legal system, meaning that people like district attorneys, other people, district courts get a lot of their funding from the amount of people that they choose to convict. So Senator Thompson saw a problem with that, and he thought that if we just eliminated a lot of these fines and fees and not make the people involved or convicted pay with them, but it comes from the general revenue funding, it makes it a little bit easier for people to not only apply for expungement, but it also makes it a little bit easier for people to navigate the legal system as well. So we are really excited for all of these bills. And now, you know the drill by now. We live in Oklahoma. We're not excited about all of the bills. So bills that we're not necessarily excited about, because I think it's just slow. So bills that we're not necessarily excited about. So the first one are classroom censorship bills. I think Cass said, not sure why the PowerPoint's moving forward. Okay, there we go. So the first one are classroom censorship bills, in which you have probably seen a lot of them going. So the first things first is that we saw 25 brand new bills introduced by 13 different lawmakers in this session alone. So a lot of these bills are modeled after Trump's executive order 13950, which basically said, or put an equity gag order on a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings for federal workers, as well as nonprofit agencies. If you received any any type of federal funding and you were receiving or doing diversity, equity, inclusion trainings, a lot of people were really scared because they weren't able to promote these type of trainings. And as somebody who did a lot of DE&I work, I kind of went at it as I will keep doing them until somebody drags me out the room, which is why I joined the ACLU of Oklahoma. But yes, so a lot of these classroom censorship bills, people tend to think that it comes from a grassroots network of just parents who are super concerned about their children's education. However, a lot of these classroom censorship bills or anti-CRT bills come from an incredibly well-resourced, well-funded, and well-organized organization. And it is a movement across the country. In fact, if you are familiar with ALEC, conservative think tank organization, they have had multiple summits in 2020 and 2021 and multiple trainings to combat CRT. So if you want to learn a little bit more about ALEC, you can also watch Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, as well as a 13th documentary. So it is no surprise that we are seeing this type of gag order on a lot of our teachers and students in the classrooms across the country. So after that executive order, we saw multiple bills, especially House Bill 1775, which was a response to that executive order. And if you are not familiar, our ACLU of Oklahoma Foundation has a current litigation process with House Bill 1775. It bans the teaching of divisive concepts, especially regarding gender, sexuality, and race. So let's actually talk about some of the bills that we saw. So this is not an extensive list. Again, if you saw my bill tracking, you would probably need to do some breathing exercises. But so Senate Bill 1250 with Senator, oh, let's go back. Can I go back? There we go. So Senator Bullard, we are a little concerned about this bill because we know Senator Bullard was one of the primary authors of House Bill 1775 as well. It not only prohibits schools from requiring teachers to talk about certain and current events, it also prohibits schools from rewarding or requiring students for participating in any type of political activism. We saw, especially last year, we saw multiple student walkouts. We currently see a lot of student walkouts this year as well, protesting injustice. And we know that a lot of these classroom censorship bills are aimed as political attacks against teachers to be able to discuss a lot of the world around them. This only applies to public schools, correct? So yes, that one only applies to public schools, but 1470, which we are going to talk about because there's been a lot of news about that one, also applies to college age as well. I know it says K-12, but also applies to college age students as well. So Senate Bill 1470 with Senator Stanridge prohibits public school teachers from promoting any type of position that opposes a closely held religious belief of their students. So this can be a really slippery slope, meaning that anytime that a teacher, an educator, or even an administrator talks about anything that goes against the religious belief of any of these students or their parents, their guardians and parents are able to sue the school district, teachers, as well as administrators for a minimum of $10,000. Not only that, but teachers are also going to have to pay this out of their own pockets, and they can't get help from any outside organizations. So just doing all the things with all these bills. Yes, it also makes me want to stress eat as well. So I agree with you. Moving on, we also have a ton of 2S LGBTQ plus bills in the legislature right now. So I counted about 8 to 12. I know that I undercounted, and a lot of these bills are only bills from this session. So I know we have a lot of carryover bills as well. So there were about 8 new anti-trans bills filed this session, but we also want to make sure that we provide resources whenever we discuss this bill, because unfortunately, a lot of the damage has already been done. We already know that 85% of trans and non-binary youth said that even the discussion, even the debate, the introduction of anti-2S LGBTQ legislation has negatively impacted their health. We know that oftentimes when the suicide attempt rate is 4 times higher than the national average, we have to be having these type of discussions and making sure that our trans and non-binary youth feel seen and heard as well. So some of these bills, again, we don't have time to go over a lot of them, but that first one is from Senator Merrick. So both of these bills, 1164 and 1249, are both bathroom bills. So the first one focuses primarily on students, and the next one focuses on public restrooms. It's a bit of a throwback to 2016. It is definitely a throwback from 2016, 2015, whenever the anti-trans bathroom bills were on the rise, especially in North Carolina. We have seen over and over and over again these bills be overturned by the courts, and yet we are still seeing it in our state legislature. We know that about 60% of 820 students, trans and non-binary students who were surveyed, said that they were prohibited from using the bathroom that identifies with their gender identity. We also know that 59% of trans people in general have been denied access to a restroom and will not use a restroom just because they don't want to be harassed for using the restroom that identifies with their gender identity as well. So moving with, we have another one from Senator Sandridge, Senate Bill 1142. So this one can also count as a classroom censorship bills. What this does is censor the books in our school libraries, especially 2S LGBTQ books. It also permits parents to submit requests to remove any books that they disagree with. I also agree, Lori. Mine is also in overdrive as well. So a lot of these books that parents may not like, or a lot of these books that Senator Sandridge may not like, are threatened to be removed from a lot of these libraries. And I don't know about you, but I also know that a lot of these books that represent us and our stories and marginalized people's stories are incredibly important for so many people to feel like they are not alone in this world. And knowing that there's already a public health crisis for trans and non-binary youth, it just feels like definitely an extra attack for an already vulnerable population. Also, if we have any questions, we can also save it at the end, but you can also put it in the chat.
Thank you, Cindy, for going over those two very important, at least with the bad ones, but I'm really excited about the good ones. And I really am glad that we were able to kind of start off there to really talk about, there is some good legislation. And I also want to recognize we have at least 3 elected officials on right now, and we're really excited that they're able to join us. As you know, and as we kind of talked about, we really want to be as interactive with this. You know, if we were all together, we'd be able to kind of commiserate with some of the bills. So please share some of your thoughts or opinions. Don't hesitate to put that in the chat by any means. I'm going to spend the next part just talking about the reproductive freedom bills. And really in a matter of, for those that know me, reproductive justice has been my life's work and one of the issues that I'm very passionate about. And the slide that you see here is a projected abortion access landscape if Roe were to fall. We know that with the Mississippi case, being heard, as well as the decision coming down probably in June, that there is an opportunity for Roe to be, completely gutted, Roe to be overturned, or Roe to stay in place, but allowing states to make more rights and create more undue burdens going against some of the previous federal law and Supreme Court decisions. And with that, no surprise, Oklahoma continues to be one of the many states trying to introduce legislation to really really ban abortion. Oklahoma is actually in a very different position than we've ever been, because the majority of Texas patients, according to recent surveys, not the majority, many Texas patients are actually coming to Oklahoma right now to access abortion care because of the current 6-week abortion ban in Texas. So many national organizations as well as healthcare providers are really looking to ensure that access remains in Oklahoma because of the impact it could have. So with this, and just quickly to note that in this particular landscape setting, Kansas is red, but it should be blue. Kansas actually has a right to an abortion found a right to an abortion in their state constitution, even though they're trying to overturn it right now. And then Michigan is in a unique position because they're actually trying to do a proactive abortion constitutional amendment that would ensure that abortion access remains state. So essentially codify it in their constitution. So kind of a grim look, but I think it kind of shows what's at stake for Oklahoma. Next slide. So we have 11 plus new anti-abortion bills filed this session. We actually have around 18 if we talk about the bills from that are carried over from last session. And I think that's important to know because that's the most bills we've actually seen in a very long time. Someone that's been doing abortion policy for 15 years. That's probably one of the most we've seen since like 2009, 2010 time. We've seen they range, these abortion bills are ranging from a whole different types that kind of run the gamut as from the category. But we do have 3 copycat Texas abortion bills. And you will see those are House Bill 3700, House Bill 4327, and Senate Bill 1503. And I think that's really important because what we're seeing is that, again, our legislators are not by any means trying to be, thinking about the needs of Oklahomans. They are just going around and, redoing legislation that they've seen in other states. 2 of these bills are very identical to Texas in the sense that they revolve around a 6-week ban, where one revolves around a complete abortion ban. And then 2 of them also have the bounty hunter provision is what we've really talked about the Texas part, in the sense that would allow for Oklahomans to essentially call in or report a provider if they believe that provider has violated that provision of 6-week abortion ban or complete abortion ban, and then allow for a $10,000 fee to be essentially rewarded to them if that were true. Again, we are of course following those extremely closely because of what's happening at the Supreme Court level with the Texas bill. Just keep in mind, and I don't know if it doesn't by any means give us it shouldn't give us any hope in this sense, but Oklahoma, we actually file all of our lawsuits in our state court. And while of course our state courts are following federal precedent, we do have more protection sometimes in the state court, and why we've been really successful in the last decade by filing our cases in state court. I don't necessarily think that's going to, be the savior for some of these abortion access, but it is something. I don't want anyone to leave this thinking, it's all doom and gloom, because we just don't know. Session's most likely going to be over before the Supreme Court makes their decision and will announce the Mississippi case. So that's another reason why people may be asking, like, why are we seeing these bills? We saw what's in Texas. Why are they not just waiting? Specifically because session most likely will be over before a decision is made, and they want to make sure that that we are able to that they are able to deny and prohibit abortions prior to the Supreme Court making their decision. Next slide. So these are the other bills that we are following when it comes to the abortion. So we have Senate Bill 1372, which is by Senator Hamilton. This is simply giving personhood rights to fetuses in the sense that it would currently, if this bill were to pass and become law, it would deny outright ban abortions. What is different about these bills is in the past, we've really seen that there would be that the criminalization happens with the providers, but this bill would actually go further and say, if you allowed or obtained or performed, so the person who receives the abortion and the person who performed the abortion could be charged with a first-degree murder or felony murder. And that's a little bit different than what we've seen in the past in the sense of criminalizing pregnant people. But we also know that that has actually been very much in line with some of the bills and actions we've seen from the Oklahoma judiciary about criminalizing pregnant people. We've seen with criminalizing people that are having miscarriages just recently with the Brittany Poolaw case. So that's one bill. The other bill, SJR 37, which would go to a vote of the people. And essentially this vote would allow, if it were to pass, would insert in our Oklahoma Constitution that there is not a right to an abortion. And why that is important is because our current Constitution is silent, or as far as whether there is an abortion or not, whether there's a right to an abortion. However, it is not. There are so many abortion cases in front of the Oklahoma State Supreme Court that it is possible, unlikely, highly unlikely, but it is possible with the current cases that the court could find that there is a right to an abortion in the state Supreme Court. And that's exactly what Kansas did a few years ago in about 2018, 2019. Their Supreme Court found that there was a right to an abortion. And that is what's made it difficult for these abortion bans to make their way through. So if that were to happen, that we would have a state Supreme Court that would find that there's a right to an abortion. This is kind of being proactive in the sense of Senator Treat is wanting to say that to explicitly say that there is not a right to an abortion in the state constitution. However, if things kind of stay the way they are and there's currently not a Supreme Court decision that says that there's a right, we're still trying to figure out what the ramifications of putting that in our state constitution is right now. So there's a lot of work. However, the regardless is we, as you all know, that the ACLU is extremely supportive of abortion access and want to make sure that we can do everything that we can to ensure that people who want an abortion have the means and the access to get one if they choose to. I believe that's the last of my slides. Is it? Okay, yeah, so I'll turn this back to you, Cindy. And again, feel free to if you have any questions, obviously put them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer.
Please do, because we are experiencing a little technical difficulty, but that we are going to get through it together. So if you are angry about any of these bills, we really invite you to attend our virtual advocacy day training on Saturday, February 19th. Our amazing organizer, Jasmine Brown-Jutras, has created an agenda for the entire day. So if you are looking for something to do on Saturday and really rage against the machine, I highly encourage going to this event. So networking starts at 11 a.m. So you can just talk with each other, drink coffee, tea, talk about whatever really matters to you. And training also starts at 11:30 a.m. So you can pick and choose what time you want to go in. So Cass will have the virtual advocacy day training registration. So it will be from 11:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and you do not have to stay the entire time at all. You can certainly pick and choose if you want to learn more about reproductive freedom in Oklahoma or 2S LGBTQ bills, or especially the classroom censorship bills, especially because we saw about 25 new bills introduced into the legislature this year alone as well. Any work around juvenile justice? Yes, so a lot of these bills we are tracking. We don't have a specific training on that. However, we know that a lot of these intersect with juvenile justice as well, especially with reproductive freedom, as well as 2S LGBTQ+, because we know that simply existing suggesting people are criminalized for their identities. So while we don't have a specific training on juvenile justice, we will touch lightly on a lot of those topics with these sessions because we know a lot of these issues intersect with each other as well. So we really invite you to join this training. It will be hosted by both Jasmine, I, and Tamaya. So if you are interested in also still getting involved with all these things and not only going to our virtual advocacy day, and you are interested in becoming a financial supporter or joining our rapid response team, we highly recommend you not only reaching out to these two people. I know Lisa will talk a little bit in a little bit, our director of development, who does a phenomenal job, by the way, will also give a few tips and pointers on how to get more involved with our organization. So Lisa, if you want to spend a few minutes to talk to our supporters and people on our call.
I think Lisa's actually going to be talking in the chat because I don't know if she has ability. So we, as Lisa, who's our development director, is sending in links to how to get involved and support our work. Please do. Or please, find a way to become a member or a supporter and sign up for some of the great work that we're having. I think yep. And Lisa has put her information in the chat. So I think we're, at the end, we recognize Cindy. Well, I'm gonna let you go, Cindy, never mind. See, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I was just going to say that although we went pretty quickly, we just wanted to make sure that we saved enough time for all the questions. I try to answer some of the chat. I know that we missed a few. So if at any time you have a question, please put it in the chat and then both Tamaya and I will be able to answer it during this time. So while you have the ACLU of Oklahoma on the call, feel free to ask any questions specifically about any of the bills or agenda. We are happy to answer them.
Right. And whilst Rusty asks, is the training online or in person? And if in person, where?
So our virtual advocacy day will be all online. We know with the pandemic, it will be on Saturday, February 19th. You can just register. I think Cass put that link, if you search in the chat, Cass put that link to sign up via Zoom. So we are having that completely virtual February 19th training day. However, we will have an in-person advocacy training day in March. So please keep an eye out for that March date. And hopefully we are able to meet everybody in person and our amazing supporters in person as well. So we both have virtual in February and in person in March.
Mm-hmm. And Ethan, yes, we will make sure that every event that we do when we can, it will be recorded and then we'll be able to share the link after, including this event. I think Terry asked, how do we work with the ACLU of Texas and how do we support those women in Texas? And that answer is resoundingly yes. We recognize that when it comes to abortion access, that it is more regional than it is state now. So we definitely recognize, we definitely, where we can, work with our local reproductive justice groups and providers, as well as anyone that calls and asking, where they can access an abortion or any information, or even just like, what are the rules in Oklahoma? We provide as much information and to be as accessible as possible. And sometimes, unfortunately, that means that we have to share information with our neighbors in Colorado, or Kansas, because sometimes they are able to see people in a more timely, faster than in Oklahoma, because our providers are just overloaded with patients right now. Oh, great question, Greg. Gray had asked, what action is the most impactful to help support the ACLU of OK? So Cindy, if you haven't answered, I feel like I'm putting you on the spot, but I can also answer that for sure.
Oh, so there are both ways. So not only do we not only do we depend on a lot of financial contributions to continue and sustain the work to be able to do, especially during legislative season, which starts on Monday, February 7th at 12 p.m. A lot of the work can be really grueling, so to be able to sustain that work is really important. But also, if you want to join our rapid response team, that is probably one of the most important things to do. We know, like Tamaya said, this is a really scary session for a lot of our legislative priorities. And we know, unfortunately, a lot of times we don't know what we need until we need it in that moment because of the way that our legislative session works. So being able to join our rapid response team to send out text messages, to email our legislators and give them a phone call to try to stop a bill in its tracks. Because even though it may be a super majority for Republicans, we also know that it can be really important to use our voice, because we have heard stories again and again of legislators who say that I can receive a dozen phone calls from a lot of people across the state, but that one phone call from my constituent can change everything. So making sure that you join our rapid response team, as well as if you're able to donate financially, it could mean the difference.
And I think I'd only add to that is that we are very, very aware that sometimes it is difficult to talk to legislators. And for those elected officials that are still on, some may have had to hop on. If you have any tips or suggestions on how to talk to you, please share. But we're very aware that sometimes it's very difficult to talk to members, especially if that member is different than, has different values or ideology than you do. I just suggest and recognize two things: is that one, that your voice is so important that even if they're not going to listen, that you have that right and sometimes that obligation to lift up your voice, because you're lifting up voices of others who are not going to be able to speak for whatever reason. And so I suggest and just encourage you that, yes, it's hard and difficult and it feels like a waste of time. It's sometimes you have to be the conscious of your district when they're hearing from 30,000 people that share their values. To hear from that one person could make a difference. Who knows? But you feel that. The second thing I just want to also mention is that we also recognize that this work is simply a tactic, right? We do not believe by any means that this is the end all be all to our overall goal of protecting and promoting civil liberties. This is one tactic to many ways. We know that it's, advocating for legislation. It's advocating for our community. It's also, getting involved in elections. It's also filing lawsuits. We recognize these are all different tactics that we use to get to our overall goal, and all are just as important and all are just as needed. So I think that's just important to kind of name that we do recognize how tough it is, but we don't think that, legislators or session is the end all be all to getting the justice and the liberation that we all need and deserve. One of the questions that I actually really liked from Lebeth was like, are you seeing any daylight with particular representatives regarding opportunities for discussions to change their minds? I think it depends on the area. We are seeing a lot of daylight in our criminal law and criminal justice reform. What we have been saying, and many elected officials have been saying for so long, is that the way that we are currently handling criminal law and criminal justice in Oklahoma is not working. It's not a deterrent. It's costing the state lots of money, but the impact it's having on individuals and families is much more. So by eliminating fines and fees, by thinking about ways that we can be by thinking things through a restorative justice lens is actually more helpful at the end. So we're seeing a lot of daylight there. In a full transparency and honesty, we're not really seeing any data of like abortion rights. And it is what it is. And we will be always upfront and honest, but I think it depends on the issues where we're sometimes seeing daylight. In regards to the classroom censorship bills that we agree, these are so awful. What we hope is that, cooler minds, or I don't know what the phrase is, like prevail in those instances where they are recognizing, even if those conversations are happening behind closed doors, like in smoke-filled rooms, that if those where someone has to say this is too much, like one of those people in leadership has to at least say this is too much. And we're hoping that we can at least be a catalyst, and you, with your help, to say like, this is, you even know that this is too much, and kind of point out and highlight when it's too much, so they can have those conversations with their buddies about that. Cindy,
And I just want to, I was just going to say, and like Tamaya said, I just wanted to echo that there is daylight, especially with criminal legal reform. I know that Representative Miller as well as Senator Thompson are both Republicans. So we see a lot of leeway with discussing criminal legal reform and automatic expungement and getting rid of fines and fees. So there's a lot of hope there. But unfortunately, a lot of our legislative priorities, especially with classroom censorship bills, which follow a lot of the model bills from ALEC and the 2S LGBTQ plus and reproductive freedom, it is more of an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the questions that I saw was, would school board members perhaps be allies to resist these classroom censorship bills? And I think that's such a great question, right? Because with many of these classroom censorship bills, if we go back to last session of House Bill 1775, these were not initiated by Oklahoma educators or by Oklahoma students, right? This was initiated by a national trend that received, some traction, and it just kind of blew up from there. So I think school board members very much should be and can be allies when it comes to these classroom censorship bills, because they are very connected to what's happening in their school districts. However, the question is, we've seen the many stories of, and we've seen the not just the stories, but the video of them just being bombarded with the hate and the vitriol, right, during these school board meetings. So very much they should be the allies. But I think some of the biggest folks, and Cindy, Jasmine, and I'm going to be really respectful of people's time, but Cindy and Jasmine and I attended the public hearing for the rules being promulgated for 1775 yesterday. And while we were the only ones and one other person there that was there to talk out in opposition, the people that were there were to talk in favor were teachers and parents. And they were talking in favor. I mean, they were not talking very eloquently about what the rules actually were, but they were there talking in favor, and were able to use that platform to say, well, I'm a teacher, or my kids go to this school. So on the flip side, I think that's how we get there as well, is right, having our students and having our parents and having our teachers really talk about the impact, the true impact of these classroom censorship bills and banning books and all these issues. They truly have the power, and we want to make sure that we are a conduit to give them the tools that they need to feel comfortable to speak out against these bills. And sorry, I know that was pretty lengthy, so I apologize on that.
No, I love that answer, just because I still remember what happened yesterday, like the back of my mind. But regarding that question about school board members taking an active stance against it, we fully support it. We also know that there are bills that prevent them to do so, especially, I don't remember which the bill number was, but we can include it in the email that Cass will send out. But Senator Stanridge has included 2 bills in which, if you are a school district administrator or a school board member who votes in favor of having inclusive and complete histories and talking about divisive concepts and race and gender and sexuality and all of these topics in the classroom, then you can be removed from public school and from teaching for about 5 years. So if I can find those bills, I will also send it to Cass. But Senator Stanridge has definitely made it a little bit more difficult to stand in solidarity with educators and students as well. So it's definitely an uphill battle.
Daryl asked, does the ACLU of Oklahoma do work at the local level? And that answer is resounding yes. And we also recognize how local level is becoming so important in some of the better ways of ensuring and protecting civil liberties. And while in the past, we probably have missed some opportunities, we have decided and collectively really talked about where we can focus our work on the local level and the impact we can have there. And that goes with the city council races, not races, but the city council work. and really trying to see like, how do we ensure that, how are we ensuring that people's civil liberties are protected at that very level? And they very much can be. And that's through, since, assessing of land, that's very much a civil liberty issue. So very local levels, and getting people more involved on the local level is definitely something that we are definitely working toward. And, we're a small staff, right? We don't know everything. So if you have suggestions, like, we never want to come off as the gatekeepers of anything. So if you have suggestions or ideas, please know that we want to hear from you. Like, we may not have it all, and we want to hear from you and suggestions. And one of the things when I came on board and I talked to staff is like, we don't mind when we don't succeed, right? Like, if we fail 30 times, 100 times, like, we're okay with that. If we know that like the work that we're trying to do is essentially trying to protect and promote civil liberties, and we fail at it, it happens. And that's not going to be a way for us not to do the work because we're scared to fail. So please share that with us. Ideas, suggestions, call us out when we need to be. That helps us be a better organization, and working toward the Oklahoma that we believe we all deserve.
Yes, and I also want to do a quick plug. Speaking of working with amazing organizations, we also partner with Freedom Oklahoma. So if you are interested in an even more in-depth look into advocacy and fighting legislation for to us LGBTQ plus youth and individuals in Oklahoma, we highly recommend attending Freedom Oklahoma's legislative preview tonight, which is at 6 p.m. So to get information on that, you just have to go to Facebook, look up Freedom Oklahoma, and find that link to register. So we're super excited to be in partnership with amazing organizations on the local level and state level as well.
And then lastly, before we give you all your lunchtime back, we're really excited is that we recognize the privilege it is to be at the Capitol and be able to kind of be in the know. And we think we have a responsibility to share that information out. One of the best things that we think about we can do that is through our weekly kind of newsletter or a weekly email that we will be sending out every Monday to talk about what happened last what happened last week. What are the upcoming things? What are the issues that are hot button? What's the gossip at the Capitol? Because we know there's a lot of it. We're going to share it all because why not? It's the people's house. If you are interested in receiving the newsletter, please make sure, and I think we're going to put the link in the chat if we have not already. I apologize if we've already done that. But if you want to sign up, if you're already receiving emails from us, you will automatically get it. But if you're not, please feel free to sign up at the link to ensure that you can stay up to date with the work that we're doing. So please look for the breakdown, our new weekly newsletter that will be starting Monday during session. And one last plug, and then I'm going to shut up, I promise, is that on Monday at noon is when session starts, and the governor is going to be giving his state of the state. I think one action that we can do all together, and maybe a commitment, is that we all agree to live tweet, watch the state of the state. And if you don't agree with it, make it known through their social media platforms. Somehow make it known that you don't agree or this is not working. A lot of the times it's very easy because the state of the state is happening and he gets all the applauses and, people are standing up. And that may not be the case, right? We all may not agree that the state of Oklahoma is in the best way that it can be. One action that seems very passive but could have an important impact is by watching that and, letting your feelings be known about what he's saying and, where maybe his vision of where Oklahoma is headed is not the same or in alignment with yours, and let that be known. So, Cindy, before we leave, is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think we covered all the bases. We just wanted to make sure that we plugged Freedom Oklahoma's legislative preview tonight at 6 p.m., as well as our virtual advocacy program and training program on Saturday, February 19th. So if you need any of those links for that, Cass will be sure to send it out in an email for everybody that joined us here this afternoon. But thank you so much for joining us on your lunch break, or you're probably at home. I hope you stay warm. Have all the things that you you need. And if you need anything else from us, you know how to reach us.
Thank you all so much for your time. Have a good rest of your day.